Hey everyone, this is Short Takes. We're back on a Thursday. We are produced by the site The Alabama Take. I'm Blaine Duncan, you know that. The man with me is Morgan Geer, also carries the moniker Drunken Prayer, which is probably how you're familiar with him. I don't know if you knew his actual name. Drunken Prayer.
How's it going?
How's it going? But yeah, is Drunken Prayer, do you think of that as a band?
In the traditional sense, like the definition of band being a group of people, like a gang, but it is an organization, an institution. It's me. A lot of it comes from, you were saying, most people don't know me by my name. That's true, but it's also most people don't even know my last name isn't Greer, it's Geer.
Yeah.
In the first place. So on a practical level, Drunken Prayer, I would go see that before I would go see some yahoo named Morgan Geer. It has come, it's full circle in that with this last record, the name has, you would think I planned this, but I didn't.
That is interesting because it does sound, it coheses with the name. Your most recent album, Thy Burdens, is the name of the album. Just the name alone, Drunken Prayer, lands right where you want it to be. It's the secular and the sacred. That's kind of what you're interested in. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I listened to this new album of yours many times and enjoyed it many times. And it feels secular and sacred. I think Cosmic Gospel is one of the labels somebody put on that.
Yeah, that got saddled with that pretty quick, and it kind of works. I couldn't think of anything better to say it. It's a friend of mine was there when we were mixing it, and he was like, yeah, I've never quite heard anything like this before. We're certainly not the first ones to do anything like this, but it might come natural and sound that way because to me it doesn't seem particularly out of the ordinary or strange. It all kind of like swims in the same pool. Musically, I understand. I'm not in some weird personal bubble that these two worlds are they're not from different planets or anything. I realize these are two different genres of music if you want to go there, but I've never really paid too close attention to genre, which probably hasn't helped my music career because I just kind of go with which way the wind is blowing personally. But to me, it seems awfully natural. The mixture between the sacred and the secular, I really don't see a boundary there, besides people's actions. But then, even then, it's, well, what's the context of what you just considered a sin or something bad is something good to someone else. Of course, we can get into some of the philosophical and theological arguments about that, but very long answer to a very short question.
No, it's interesting stuff. And I think that is part of why this album is so good, is that you're tapping into these. It's not you're blatant about it. You're just forcing people to figure out, is this song situated for a church or for a bar, or is there a difference, or those kinds of things?
Right. I'm handing you a bouquet. What you do with it is up to you. I'm not asking anything of anyone with this record. It's just lovely.
Yeah, it is good. Ezekiel Saw the Wheel. I was listening to that as I was getting ready for this. I had it turned up. It's one of my favorites off of the album.
I'm a big UFO nut. What can I say? Yeah,
I love the story of how maybe you got started, or at least found the name. Well, you were playing gospel songs in bars on a Sunday afternoon. I'm painting a horrible picture. You tell me a little of this story.
Well, I had just moved to Portland, Oregon.
Oh.
I had finally left the South, and I wanted to live somewhere of my choosing, not just where my parents. We moved around a lot when I was little, basically from the Gulf Coast, specifically Mobile. But single mom, we moved where the jobs were, all over Appalachia and up into the Northeast a little bit. And I wanted to live somewhere that I chose, and it took a little while. I took moving out to basically the end of the country. I had been in this conversation with Tom Waits, and I was working at a bookstore in Northern California, and we struck up a small friendship. And we talked about gospel music a lot. That's where we found common ground. And he turned me on to some music, and I was telling him which direction I was going, and we landed on this kind of what we were saying about there not being a huge difference between the secular and the sacred, except in theological and philosophical debates. And that if you live within that kind of paradigm, there's a tension and an excitement to it that I carried into Portland. And one of the first gigs I could just get at all, because it's a great music town, was Sunday afternoons at this seedy biker bar run by the people who used to own the Palomino in Los Angeles. Fun fact.
Wow.
And it was kind of a neutral ground for at least a couple of different gangs. I don't know much about that culture, but it was a fairly peaceful place. And we were playing the corner, and I just thought, what the hell? Let's do this. And it was stand-up bass and me and piano sometimes. We're just kind of background music. And I thought it was, for one, it was fun. It was absurd to be in this situation, playing this kind of music to these folks, but also kind of perfect at the same time, which is, I'm closing that circle. Recently, I get a lot of people saying how happy I am playing, how happy they are that Drunken Prayer is playing these songs in dark punk rock dive bars and stuff.
That's the appeal. I love the idea of that. You and some guys just setting up in a seedy place playing these. That's the thing about it. I couldn't figure out. These songs are honestly too good for church. They're too well played. Usually you go to a church. Well, you go to a modern church and you get really crappy songs. But let's even go way back to when you and I were kids. You go to a church in 1976 and you got these older guys playing guitar, and it's okay, but it's not. You've put the, I don't want to say production in a bad way, but it's thought out. It's well produced. It's the instrumentation is just chef's kiss.
Just from a production level, it seemed like real low hanging fruit. It's like, I don't see anybody making not this kind of music, but this kind of music that sounds this way. And you're singing old hymns, and stuff. But it's like, well, why not? If you're going to sing passionately, why don't you also play passionately?
Yes. Check out the reverb, right?
Yeah, it's just like, that's what grabbed me outside of the church, was like Loretta Lynn and George Jones records. And as much as I love them, as great as they are, they're even better when they're doing their gospel stuff, because I feel like they're having kind of a literal one-on-one conversation. And it's not with me. And so there's this extra thing in their voice to where it's just like, I can't not put everything into this, because I'm laid bare hairs singing these songs to a higher power, or like the Louvin Brothers or something. Like it's extraordinary.
I had to come upon those artists, especially the Louvin Brothers and those types outside of church, which is so rare. It was so weird. Like, why not play it in church there? The song's beautiful. It fits what you're saying.
I'm not going to pretend to know a whole lot about modern Christian or praise music, but it seems to be almost a symptom in what's going on in modern churches in general, kind of going downhill. And maybe you're serving a different master than you claim to be. And along those lines, that music is still being played really well and like this, but it's not going to be in churches where they're recording anything, or there's probably no cameras. They're in snake handling kind of situations. They have this like amazing bands. The Abe Partridge podcast, Alabama Astronaut, delves into this. And funny enough, I didn't know who he was. Abe wasn't on my radar until I started making this record. And people were just like, you're from Mobile, you're doing a gospel record, surely you know Abe Partridge.
I don't know. So you just turned me on to him.
Oh, it's great stuff. Yeah, he's a songwriter, at least a former preacher. He's roughly our age, but he's got this podcast about going into snake handling churches for their music, not for the snake handling. Like, go check out the freaks. It's like, this music is incredible, and the people are genuine and very sweet. And he makes the argument that why a lot of that didn't get picked up in the early Lomax compilations. That a lot of people just didn't like these people or were from. It's like, I'll stick to the fields and the honky tonks to try to find forgotten music.
Do you know where he went? The town, or?
Not particularly. He's traveling. He hooks up with one particular family. I'm only on like the 4th or 5th episode. I want to say maybe West Virginia.
Do you consider yourself religious?
It seems not exactly a loaded question, but
Yeah.
I like the trappings. Sometimes the superficial trap. I grew up Irish Catholic.
Oh, you did?
So like the cathedral in Mobile on Christmas Eve is just about the prettiest spectacle you're ever going to see. And we just got back from Ireland and Scotland and England. The cemeteries are just gorgeous. It's where we got some of the ideas for the artwork on this record. So I like the trappings of that. The where it gets more human and earthly, I start to have a problem with when it's proselytizing and finger wagging, and people are trying to tell you what they think God is pretty presumptuous. It's like about as presumptuous as you could possibly be. This thing that you can't even say his name, and you're going to try to tell me what he thinks is ridiculous. This is going to be an Asheville answer. I'm very spiritual. I'm not very religious.
No.
I think I'm probably closer to Zen Buddhism than
yeah.
any organized religion.
Yeah.
It's nicer.
It is. But yes, at the same time, you can be more near to the Zen Buddhist type feeling and love these kinds of songs. That there is no dichotomy to me in that.
And they're not random songs. We didn't set out to make like a socially conscious record. We're certainly not going to make one that's not socially conscious. So there's no songs on here that I think that really deal with like sin, or that deal with evangelism, or you ought to do this or you ought to do that. They're holding up a mirror to humanity, like the selfishness in man. They're not. Leon Payne isn't saying stop being selfish. They're just like, this is messed up. Do with that what you will. Long ago and far away. Dylan's song I got from Odetta. It's just describing what is literally happening. And it's not saying you're a bad person for being a bad person. It's like, maybe think for yourself.
You talked about we didn't set out to make this finger pointing record, and you didn't. But critic Matt Zoller cites, he has a favorite quote of mine. It's everything is political. And so if you put out a piece of art, it might be political in a way.
Chances are, and context matters. You know, who's listening to it and what environment.
That's so true.
And what are they bringing to the table?
You use the pronoun we. You're including Matt Patton. We got to give him a shout out. No? Yeah. Dialback Sound. This record was made at Dialback Sound. It's called Thy Burdens. People can hear it, buy it in all the places. What's enjoyable to me about these songs is that they're not many you have heard. It's possible, but Morgan has put his fingerprint on them. So if you go back and listen to the original, it's not his version is useless, or sometimes you hear songs you see a record that's a lot of cover songs or whatever you want to call them, and you think, what's the point? No, not with this.
Yeah, we didn't mean to do that, but there's been a lot of reverberations from this record, and one is just people just liking the music alone. And I'm not saying you have to discount the words, but the words aren't meant to be divorced from the music either. And they make just good music. I've seen a couple of reviews where there's a little disclaimer being like, you don't have to believe in God even. You don't have to like gospel music to like this. And it's like, no, you do not. And it's like, because your version of God's might be different than mine, even if it's completely atheistic or you don't believe in a God at all. I still think you still live in a society on a planet with other people. And it's a humanist record as much as anything.
Yeah, to go back to your joke, it's no wonder you live in Asheville.
Right.
Yeah. Before we get in our big four questions, I want to tell everyone where you can be heard and seen so they can slap your back, shake your hand, love on your neck. Looks like from July 15th to July 17th, you're going to be in Portland, Oregon.
I'll be in Portland and surrounding countryside for about a week and a half.
How nice.
Yeah.
July 18th, you'll be at the Barn Dance in Wilhelmina, Oregon.
Yeah, it's beautiful out there, a little farm.
That sounds nice. July 19th and 20th, you're going to set up shop at Deer Lodge in Portland, Oregon.
2 shows. We're doing a matinee in the afternoon, and then we're calling it a dinner show at night. It's just that it's a small place. We're basically a house show.
Okay.
And so we wanted to make sure enough people could get in and see the thing.
It sounds intimate. Nice stuff.
Yeah.
And then let's go to August 9th for our people who, probably a little bit more of our people who are watching and listening. You're back in the South at the Town Pump in Black Mountain, South Carolina.
North Carolina. Black Mountain,
North Carolina. I
Yep,
apologize.
That's all right.
August 15th at the infamous Nick in Birmingham. How many shows have I seen there? I have lost count.
Yeah.
You're going to be with the Williamson brothers.
Oh, man,
Two
they're
of
the
my buddies.
best. Yeah, they got a new record out. Also
That's right.
recorded Dialback.
Right.
Yeah.
Might see one of those guys on our show this season. Hint, hint.
Yeah, they're hilarious.
Witty, the most witty.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to save a story for his show, but Adam's show. But
I'll
try
be
to get him
listening
to tell
for that
it.
one.
Yeah, I'll try to get him to tell it. It's so good. Sanctuary the next night, August 16th in Tuscaloosa, my old stomping ground.
Did you? My mom graduated there. Yeah, she played the oboe in the $1 Million Band.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So she did it right. Yeah.
she sure did.
For dates that extend beyond those, it is easy. Morgan has a very nice, clean website. Just go to Drunken Prayer. That's so easy to remember. Just drunkenprayer.com. And I'll put his social media links below.
I'll be in Mobile
Oh, yeah.
on the 24th. Since
Doing South.
this is the Alabama take. Yeah,
Let's
we're
shout
also
that out.
we're also
Where you
doing
gonna be?
Muscle Shoals. Well, let's see. It's Muscle Shoals on the 22nd of August at the Lava
Is that
Room.
Lava Room? Oh,
Yeah, I hear great things about it. I can't
I
wait.
like that. I like
With
it.
Hunter McClendon, and then Callahan's on Sunday the 24th.
It was Callahan's. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're hitting all the spots, man. Everybody knows those spots.
It's cool. A lot of times Sundays are you either skip them or just do what you can. Where they're actually kind of preferable doing mostly gospel music. I was like, I'll come in on a Sunday and we'll give it to them.
That's awesome. Let's get into our 4 questions. It's the
Let's do
heart of
it.
our show. How would your best friend introduce you?
It would be sarcastic, and they would claim to not know me in the first place and walk away, and leaving me holding the bag. With my friends, we throw a lot of verbal bows, and we're all pretty sarcastic, and sincerity can kind of be a poison for us. So they're not going to say, "Oh, he's a really sweet guy." This guy, I'm not sure we've ever met.
Are people who love your music at a show and afterward, do they find it hard to come up to you?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess I wouldn't know if they truly did, but people do come up and talk to me. I mean, it's like I try to make myself available. I'm not super comfortable in large social situations or even small ones for that matter. And it's funny. I was just listening to another podcast, the blind boy out of Ireland, and he said a lot of times when he's out on tour. And it's really resonated with me is like I'm thinking more about what's my body language, how am I coming off without like listening and engaging enough to where, because I'm so kind of socially uncomfortable that I just kind of like, am I weird? Am I weird? What's the subject matter? What they just asked me.
Yeah.
Which I don't think people find it hard to come approach me. I try to be as nice as possible, or I just leave. Otherwise, I'll put up my QR code at the merch booth.
The reason why I ask is you're playing these days. You're playing a whole lot of these gospel songs off of your new album, Thy Burdens, and then you've got a certain look of a guy who would be playing a biker bar, maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just wondering if people like, no, I'm not going to talk to him. He seems rough.
When folks want to talk about that kind of stuff, I'm using more all in, because then you're starting to get into philosophical and existential questions, like really big topics. I'm not good with small talk. I get a little socially anxious.
Sure, I relate to that. But second question, what's the most fascinating thing you've learned recently?
Over COVID, I've started listening to a lot of Alan Watts lectures over and over again. That's why I brought up the Zen Buddhism thing, is that I'm not going to pretend to study that, but I've listened to nearly every word Alan Watts has ever said on a microphone. It's this false sense of control that we have as human beings that gets us into 99% of our problems. And he's got this phrase of learning to sail, which resonates for me. I come from a sailing family on the Gulf of Mexico down there. learning to sail, going with which way the wind blows, which doesn't mean you're fatalistic. You can keep your eye on the prize, but you're going to get there with more of a peace of mind if you let the wind take you as opposed to trying to row against it. So you don't need to break out the oars till you get closer to the dock, and then just let the universe take care of itself. It's something we're born out of, not into. And COVID taught me that. It's like, you know what? Nobody can really do anything. My ambition doesn't mean a thing right now. So do what you feel is right without, of course, without being fatalistic. You still have to take care of business. But letting go of that sense of control has eased my mind and made my life a lot easier. This record was incredibly easy to make. It's probably the best thing I've done. And I didn't write a song on there. I arranged a lot of them. There was art ideas and stuff, but we did it when we could. We didn't think too much about it. And just here it is. The stuff I've really fretted over, to me, sounds like I fretted over it. There's this idea of, before the written language, these Irish folklore, these stories didn't exist. You couldn't carry them around. They didn't really have a beginning and an ending because they were all passed down verbally and through stories and through dance and through music, which to me is a beautiful idea of not being able to control our stories, and so that they're 100% contextual. The person who's telling them is releasing their version of it, like not having that control over music, art, anything gives you, ironically, a sense of control over. I'm learning to sail. Sometimes you just let the mainsail do its thing.
I can release control of things, but it usually is with a lot of claw marks.
Yeah. It doesn't feel natural.
It doesn't feel natural.
As human, we have to have some sense of control. We have to put a roof over our head. We have to keep the lights on. Part of playing music isn't just where the pick hits the strings or the stick hits the skin. It's going to work and keeping the lights on. It's doing your job, whether you're landscaping or things that don't seem to have anything to do with music. If you weren't doing those things, you wouldn't have the time or the mental bandwidth to make art, to write, to dance, to do whatever you do that you might consider a hobby or your second career. I couldn't do this if I was constantly worrying about where my next meal was coming from.
Exactly. Let's get to the third question. Perhaps you might want to tie these in together. How do you want to make others feel? And does that seem to be the way they feel when they're around you or when they're hearing your music?
I feel a tremendous sense of empathy. But from a great distance away, if that makes sense. It's kind of 60,000 foot view of humanity. I don't necessarily want to hang out with a group of people and just small talk. In fact, a lot of times it makes me want to run and scream. But the individuals, what they're going through, I'm deeply interested in, and I care deeply for everybody. That whole thy burdens thing, it's words to it are profound. I tried to just speak at a show and got all choked up. Just this idea that no matter what you're going through that day, if someone's like road raging on you or something, you just step back and you're just like, thy burdens are greater than mine.
Yeah.
And I think that comes through. I hope it does. Well, actually, I hope it does just because I'll be liked. But more important, I hope that kind of empathy means something in the world and not just providing me with angst. I think the idea of being happy isn't something you live inside of. It's something that visits you, and that you will find true happiness in other people's happiness. When you see someone else succeed and being just so happy for them, it's easier said than done. It's way easier when I think of my son that way, or my wife, or my mom. But on just a grand level, to see people do things and achieve things that make them happy. To see happy people makes me happy. Not because I want to be their friend. It's because we're all born out of this, whatever this is, and here we are. And you can't have extreme highs without extreme lows. It's that Alan Watts thing again, this dualism. You can't have day without night, obviously. And you can't have sublime joy without there also existing its opposite somewhere right now in probably some very dark room. And those are the kind of things that will keep me up at night.
Yeah.
So I do think people can feel it. And that's gets back to, do people talk to me after shows? I feel like there's often an understanding, or people, if it's from this gospel record or just my own, I've had people just, I've got this song called Crazy Alone that I wrote during COVID, and I had someone tell me, I don't want to tell you how much of a difference this made in my life. I don't know where I was going, but I heard this and I felt like I wasn't so alone.
Really?
Yeah.
That's special.
It's incredible. That's about the most incredible feedback I've heard from a song. And it was just something I was just writing about myself, but in the context of the royal we and the royal me, and that I'm not going through anything that someone else hasn't gone through or might also gone through again. And I don't have any solutions, man, but I'm going through it too. And I'm still here.
That's good. Our fourth and final question is the same for everyone. Tell me what's done up real good for you.
Oh, man. You caught me on a good week because there's a lot of good stuff going on.
Okay, give me a couple.
Let's see. The very latest thing, I would say there's nothing better than Conecuh sausage from Conecuh, Alabama. We have a never-ending supply in the freezer. They do it up real good.
Yes, they do. I don't know that there's a meat that's better.
No, I like to think we single-handedly brought it up into the local grocery stores in North Carolina because.
Oh, you and your family?
I hope so. I hope so too. That's the story I'm sticking with for sure.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this question because a lot of it already ties together with what we've already been talking about. I'm not going to explain this well, but the idea of quantum physics and particles changing as they're observed and even interacting with each other from just like crazy distance from each other. The observation changes it, the particle. So context completely matters. And I was listening to this Blind Boy podcast, and he was talking about Irish folklore and how it relates to quantum physics in that you couldn't write it down for a long time. And the story mattered from the perspective of who was telling it. The context means everything. If it's just written down on a piece of paper and wadded up, it just sits there. Otherwise, it has no beginning and no end because it doesn't physically exist. And that's one of the things I love about music in general, is that you can put it on a compact disc or vinyl, but that's not music. The music it's just caught the music, just like your radio. Your radio isn't generating music. It's replicating it. It's putting it. So the idea of music and old stories just live in the stars. And they tell us they tell a story that is going to morph depending on who is telling it, but you can't get rid of it over millennia. And so this all works together. And these are the kind of things. Talk about things that keep you up at night. This is that kind of our place here is obviously fleeting, and I'm continually trying to figure out what we're doing here, what I can leave it a better place than I found it, and protect my soul into what I would call the afterlife, and how I can live with myself in context. Sometimes you get in fights, and so there was nothing I could do.
That's a kind outlook, though, to yourself and to others.
Well, life is short.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure I answered your question.
No, you
I'm
did.
Sorry.
No, you did. It was great. Fascinating, actually. I could carry on this conversation for much longer, but I think we've reached the end. Morgan, as Drunken Prayer, don't forget, is online in plenty of usual spots. We'll link below in the YouTube show notes. Don't be disarmed that the links are Drunken Prayer. It's not Morgan Geer, though that is his name. Following him online, you'll see clips of live shows and know if and when he's coming near you with songs from Thy Burdens and previous recordings. Morgan, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you taking some time with me today.
Thanks for letting me be on your podcast. I'm an avid listener, and it's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you very much. And you guys will see him in Oregon and Alabama and North Carolina and on and on.